Hoop Heads podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball. Hello and welcome to the Hoop Heads podcast. It's Mike Klinzing here with my co-host Jason Sunkel, and tonight we are pleased to welcome for the second Four Quarters episode Greg White from Bentonville West in Arkansas. Greg, welcome.
Hey guys, been a while, but been keeping up, listening to everybody else. Had some great guests on, and appreciate what you guys are doing to grow the game of basketball. It's been a fun journey keeping up and listening to you guys. So happy to be back on for Four Quarters, and we'll chop it up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited. We're excited to get to the topics that you sent over to us tonight.
It's tip-off time with Coach Greg White.
Let's start out with your first one for the first quarter and talk about making adjustments for the state tournament.
Yeah, and we talked about, before we got started, about how different the state tournament is for everybody. But one thing that remains the same, whether it's Arkansas, Indiana, anywhere, there's a level of excitement and the preparation changes. And, for us, the familiarity is a big thing because film's out on everyone. There's not much you can hide. And so what we try to do, number one, we try to get in the state tournament. The second thing we want to do is we want to try to find wrinkles. And something I learned from Tate's Lock and guys was you start trimming your playbook. I know a lot of guys think you add to it. But this time of year, you need to get down to, to the bare essential, what you're really good at. And that's one of the things we look at is this is what we're really good at and have a lot of confidence in. And then can we add a wrinkle to it? But, I've seen guys come out and try to change their whole thing and try to surprise people. Well, what you've done is, you spend more time trying to reteach it instead of retool. And, fatigue's a big thing for everybody. Legs are gone. Their mind's gone. Basketball's such a long season. That's what a lot of people don't realize is, we go through a major holiday break, sometimes two. In our state, we get to start before Thanksgiving. And so the season takes so long and such a wear and tear. And, now you throw in the flu breaks out and you throw, there's just so much going into it that you've got to find a way to keep your team fresh when it matters. And that's at the end of the season.
What do you do in terms of the amount of time you spend prepping your own team and what you guys are going to do versus the amount of time you spend preparing for an opponent in terms of scouting, in terms of having your second team run through the other team's offenses or defenses, or do you focus more on what you're going to do as opposed to what your opponent's going to do?
No, that's a great question, and and I think guys in our league would tell you I feel like we do a really good job on scouting and kind of pride ourselves on catching what you're going to do, and especially the first time through the league play, we want to do that. And in our classification, there's a great chance you see a league opponent for the third time, but we always try to find a way on our scouting and through visiting with other coaches. How can we prepare for those guys and what's going to get us the most prepared? So for us right now, we're at about a 75-minute practice, a lot of shooting, free throws, game shots, and we go through our stuff. Not as much 5-on-5 right now for us as it is. We want to walk through what they're going to do. We discuss how we'll defend it, what we're going to call out, things that we know we've got to stop. And then again, like a lot of it too comes into just being back to what our DNA is, and that's being a really good defensive team. And so for us, we feel it's got to be a fair balance. Today, for instance, in practice, we've got 4 regular season games left, and we spent probably out of the 75 minutes, I bet you it was 35 on us, 35 on them, and 5 minutes of just us talking and getting prepared. So it's a pretty good balance. I mean, you've got to continue to do what you do, but I think at this time of year, teams are still alive for one or two reasons. They've either got or 3 reasons, I guess. They got really good players, really good coach, or both. And so you've got to be prepared to help your team in any way you can.
What do you do from a mental standpoint? Is there anything you do differently in terms of your approach with the kids and just how you go about preparing them for, I don't know if the pressure is the right word, but just for the different environment that they might face in a state tournament game as opposed to a regular season game that they've been playing all throughout the year?
I think the big thing is you've got to keep the main thing, and that's the game. Um, kids understand it's a win or go home situation. And I think the less you talk about that, the better. I mean, there, there's two things about it that you've got to be prepared to handle, and that's making sure you've done everything you can to prepare your kids. But in the end, it's still they've got to go out and perform. And the last thing we as coaches want to do is add to the stress. You've got seniors that the finality setting in. That this, for the majority of high school players, this is the last basketball they're going to play. And that's starting to set in. You're going through senior nights right now, and you're dealing with that, and then you're dealing with, once you get to the tournament, that this is it. I know some states have a where you can come through the losers bracket. In our state, it's one and done, and so the issue we have is just not saying to keep them relaxed, but keep the focus on what we need to do, and that's go out and play basketball to the best of our ability.
So in other words, it's not let's revamp the whole thing. Let's start talking about, hey, this is how we handle a tournament. It's more, look, we've played games before. We're going to play some games in the state tournament. Let's approach it the same way that we've been approaching it for the entire season.
Yeah, and I think one of the things this year, we're actually hosting our classification state tournament. And so this year we didn't travel because we didn't need to worry about a hotel room. What we had to worry about was, can we prepare, play a quality opponent, and then go home, get in our own bed, our kids mature enough to turn fortnight off and go to bed because they've got a game the very next day. And that's the turn what we did this year. Next year will be totally different for us because we know we won't be hosting the state tournament, and so we'll put our kids in hotel situations. And I think most coaches do that, or that are able to, is you use December to prepare for, late February, early March. And you've got to know your team, your kids have got to understand what's expected. Because those games count, but they don't matter. These games all matter right now. And so just making sure you've done everything, your staff has done everything to prepare guys to go out. Some draws, last year we had a late game, had a day off, and then the next game. And so that was kind of a great draw for us. A lot of times, you'll get back-to-back day games before you get a day off. And so you just got to find ways in early December, if your state allows it, to prepare your team. That way, when you go play an 8:30 game, have to go back to the hotel and have the next game at 5:30 the next day, that your kids have been in that situation.
The first quarter is in the books.
All right, let's move on to quarter number 2. Our second topic is, when you're down 3, do you foul or do you defend?
Foul every time. And I know there's guys that, I heard someone say, one of the college coaches say, well, fouling up 3 is like kissing your sister. Well, I mean, I've seen too many crazy things happen. I think you have to foul and play the odds. There's a lot of guys that anytime a foul or defend pops up on Twitter, I start reading and watching because, it's a big topic and it's something you've got to discuss with your kids, and more importantly, you got to practice with your kids. We've had one situation this year, and we actually, we fouled probably a little bit too early, and but we had a chance to come down and we made free throws. We fouled. They cut to 1, more time than we wanted to allow. We had to inbound the basketball. They fouled us. Luckily, we made both free throws again, and the clock was able to expire for us. But I think, personally, I'm an always foul guy, just because I want to put the ball in my guys' hands, and have a chance to not let them take the shot. I want to have a chance to block out on a rebound.
So here's what I worry about if I'm in that situation is, I worry about the kid who reaches in and fouls on the 3, or somebody takes a crazy shot and all of a sudden somebody's reaching in and now you send them to the line for 3 foul shots, and that's the thing that I worry about. I have a personal story here, Greg, that I'm going to share with you. I've shared it, I believe, at least once on the podcast. So when I was a senior in high school, we played in our state tournament, and we were in, I guess it would have been the third round of our state tournament, and we were playing a team, Lorraine Admiral King, who at the time was ranked in the USA Today coaches poll, which was, popular back then. They were like 13th, and they had a future teammate of mine at Kent State that was on the team, and they also had a player that played at Xavier, and we were playing against them. I made a shot with 3 seconds to go, got fouled, went to the line, made the free throw. So we're up 3 seconds to go. They got to go the length of the floor. To be honest, I don't remember what the discussion was in the timeout of whether or not we were going to foul. I don't know if it was ever discussed that we were going to foul or not foul, but we didn't foul, and they ended up throwing the ball down the length of the floor, and I was standing at half court looking down into the corner where they ended up shooting what was a 2-pointer with the guy's feet standing on the line, and kid made the shot. There was a referee standing right in the corner looking at his feet that walked off the floor like it was a 2-point shot, which would have given us a 1-point victory. And an official came all the way across the floor from half court to call it a 3. And the game went to overtime, and then we lost. As you can tell, I'm not bitter at all here, Greg.
No.
So I guess if I had to do that situation over retrospectively, fouling probably would have been a good move, especially with 3 seconds to go. There was very little time to be had. So I definitely came up on the bad end of one of these situations. So if I had that one to do over again, even though we did win the game because it was a 2-pointer, I probably still would go back. I probably would still go back and foul. And my future teammate and I at Kent, we spent 4 years, occasionally going back and revisiting that game, and it's one that I'll never live down.
So I've actually, Greg, I've got one from this season. I coached middle school basketball, and my team was losing all game, like literally all game. I hadn't had a lead, and we went on like a 12-2 run to take the lead by 2 with like 17 seconds left. I had one foul to give. We fouled them the first possession, and then we actually got a turnover, made a free throw, went up 3, and I, for some godforsaken reason, decided that I wasn't going to foul, and I just wanted to the other coach called a timeout. I could have easily just said, hey, make them shoot a 1-and-1. The worst case scenario, they make the first one, and then they miss the second one and try to do a putback, because there was like 3.5 seconds left. And lo and behold, they threw the ball down the court. My kids didn't foul. They hit a 3-pointer, and we lost in overtime. So I fully owned that one, and I told my kids after the game, that wasn't your fault, that was my fault. I should have had you foul, because they tried to talk me into fouling, but I was being bullheaded, and I don't know what I was thinking. But I lost that game, and I told the kids, listen, that loss isn't on you guys. You guys did a heck of a job. You fought all the way back, and then I blew it. So I own it.
One of the things, I have a card, that has plays, reminders I keep in my pocket during the game, and one of it, I have a sign on there that says we foul up 3. And because I never want to go away from, what I believe, talking to you guys right now, because like you just said in the game, let's just defend. We've been playing really good. But you think about what we tell our kids. Our kids are thinking, don't foul, don't foul. Well, in their mind, that means don't guard, because they don't want to risk fouling. And most of the time they get a clean look. Something we do if we have a dead ball, and my son Evan would tell you he hates it. I make Evan, if he's on the floor close, I make him go tell the official, we are fouling. That way the official hears, a player, we are fouling on the catch, and they know that. And then the same thing, another little trick we'll do is I'll tell Evan to go out and tell the official, hey, we're not trying to foul, and then we'll foul going for a steal, and it's just kind of a play on words where they're like, well, the kid just told me they weren't trying to foul, and so, we'll go out and slap as hard as we can, hope the ball comes loose, and, if we foul, great, it still went in our favor, but sometimes you can get away with a steal on that I actually saw Lisa Leslie do that in the finals. I guess it was last year or the year before, and thought it was brilliant. I mean, she walks up to the official and says, hey, we're not fouling, and then just smokes the lady and comes away with a steal. And so but yeah, if we have a chance, we tell the official we are fouling on the floor, and we have a foul call, and when it gets down to the right time, we'll call for that, and most of the time the kids are good on it, but a headsy player is going to try to shoot it, and so you've got to hope the official understands what you're trying to do and just because there's a contact, the guy throws his arms up, he doesn't give him, an attempt. But I think it's one of those things. You get a group of coaches together and ask, you're going to get kind of like you guys. You got two horror stories. Our story was we won with it this year. I think everybody's been in that situation, and you're either going to, you either have a stout belief in this is what I'm going to do, or you have either way. People are one side or the other. But then we've all got stories about things we've seen happen, and so it's definitely one of those things. I love to talk about other coaches and understand, their why. I have a friend that he doesn't foul, and his belief is, we put ourselves in a position to win by playing good defense. Why would we get away from that? And so I respect that, but he knows if we're playing each other and I'm up 3, I'm fouling. So.
Yeah, I think one of the things there is just to make sure that if you're a coach that you have thought through what your philosophy would be. And to your point, you can make a good argument probably on either side, but the question becomes just you philosophically, if you've made that decision beforehand, then when it comes to a stressful situation in a game where it comes down to making that last second decision, you don't even really have to make the decision in the moment because you've already made that decision prior to. And to your point, you have it on a card just to remind you of, hey, this is what I believe in. And even though I might have a slightly different feeling for whatever reason, maybe in a game you're thinking, maybe we're just, you said we're playing really good defense, so let's just play it out. Well, that goes against what you've thought about when you're calm and when you've had time to really think about what you believe. And so I think if you go ahead and make that decision beforehand, you're going to end up with better results.
Correct. And it gives you time to practice it. It's a great way to end practice situation. And so that way, when your guys are in it, you can fall back on what you've trained and worked on.
So what we're going to do is we're going to throw a poll up on Twitter. So coaches that are out there listening, look for that. Once the episode drops, we will put out a poll on Twitter, and you can weigh in on whether or not you would foul or defend when you're up 3.
That was the halftime buzzer. Let's take a quick break.
Registration is now open at www.headstartbasketball.com for this summer's Head Start basketball camps. We'll be hosting camps this summer in Strongsville, Westlake, Avon Lake, Oberlin, Brunswick, Highland Heights, Mentor, and Hudson. At Head Start Basketball, we care deeply about making a positive impact on the lives of young basketball players, both on and off the court. It's through building strong relationships with our players, parents, and coaching staff that we are able to use the game of basketball to enrich the lives of those we interact with, both inside and outside of our organization. We believe that our attention to detail, our growth mindset, and our commitment to lifelong learning allows us to help our players achieve their fullest potential. We are passionately committed to providing players, parents, and coaches with everything they need to reach their goals. These core values run through everything we do. Check out our website, www.headstartbasketball.com, and discover why you should attend a Head Start basketball camp this summer. Hope to see you there.
All right, let's move on to quarter number 3. On this one, we're going to talk about pregame walkthroughs.
The guys I work with will tell you I hate them, and one of the reasons is I always feel the team is never as serious as I want them to be, and a lot of you guys can, you've been through it. You're really wanting to be focused, and hey, we've got to do this, and then and my kids are thinking, what time's the bus leaving? You got managers running around saying, hey, I can't find this. What time's our team meal?
What girls are coming to the game tonight?
Yes, everything but the game seems to be on their mind during the pregame. And so I've always been one that I would rather stay later the day before and feel good leaving at night than worry, about going through things that day. Like now, if I'm watching film, like we play on Tuesday night, so we play tomorrow night, I'll watch film tonight in the morning. If I see something that we haven't covered, I think that's more beneficial for me to have something there. But I really don't like to go in and, to beat the dead horse of what we went over all day the day before in practice. And so that's the hard part. Now, with it getting close to state tournaments, you really, it changes your mentality on it because your opponent, who it could be, one of two, and so they become more important. And so it's one of those where I guess my thing is I want it to be a special thing to have a pregame, a real, like it. And again, that goes back to our December, like, hey, we're going to play these guys. Let's walk through. Here's what they're going to do. And so that's one that makes it a little better and easier on the mental approach. But when you do it every single game, and I have friends that run a practice on game days. I mean, they get a sweat, which I like, and we've tried that in the past. We've also had where you come in, you do a shooting workout, shooting routine. We go through, we walk through their stuff, get on the bus. But for the most time, like my scouting reports, I think, are more for my peace of mind to know I've done everything possible than, if you pass them out to your team or whatever you go over. I think there's just so many different things, and that's another topic I like to talk to coaches about is what your game day routine is, because there's so many teams that, that they just seem so prepared, and you're thinking, God, they must do it. But I have a friend that his team never. I mean, they are so sharp, and they don't do anything on game day. They literally go home. If he can send the kids home, he lets them go home. If it's a road game, they get on the bus. They don't even touch a basketball till they get to the gym. And he believes that, I mean, he's a guy down in Arkansas, and he'll tell you all the time, the hay's in the barn. I mean, there's nothing else we can do. And so he feels he prepares on the day before and the week of, and game day is game day, and they just show up, and they've had great success doing that. So I think it's got to be tailored to your kids and also to your personality. Be honest with you, I'll let our staff do it. I try not to even be out there because I find myself getting mad and tense, and I'm the guy that somebody's laughing or having or relax, and I'm like, well, we're going to beat 40, because they're not as intense as I want them to be, and but that may just be the makeup of that kid. So I think you've got to find a balance with what fits your program and with your players.
When you do have a walkthrough, do you typically, like, let's say you play, let's say you have a Saturday night game, would you bring the kids in, or have you brought the kids in at 11 o'clock in the morning to do a hour walkthrough, or would you do it in like the pregame? Maybe you have some space, an extra gym or something, where you might do a walkthrough while the kids are already in uniform an hour before the game. Which way have you experienced it? Do you prefer one or the other? Do you prefer none of it? What's your experience been with those different options?
If it's a situation where we're not in school, I like to make sure the kids aren't staying in bed till 2 in the afternoon. And so, like our first conference game this year in January, we're not back in school yet. So we make them come up there around lunchtime. That way they did get to sleep in, but they are up. We get to see them, do a light practice where they have, got to sweat a little bit, send them home, bring them back, eat a team meal, get on the bus, and travel is what we did. When it's a situation where in school, this is one of the things we talk about with our guys is, by the time they get to school, it's 12 hours before game time for us. And so fatigue starts setting in this time of year. And so we want to spend as little time as possible on our feet. And, they've went through a school day, hopefully they haven't fought with their girlfriend or got in trouble in class, and I mean, they're studying, they're doing everything. And then now I've got to get them rattled into, around 4 o'clock for a 7:15 game. Here we have JV at 4:30. So we try to get where the JV's focused, and then the varsity, they've got to sit through another varsity game, and then be ready to play. And so for us, I think personally for me, less is more on game day, meaning let's bullet point it. Here's what we got to do. Here's their main plays, and let's move on with it. But again, I think the ownership for me is I give it to the guys I work with, and they enjoy it and do a good job. And because during the game, they're the ones that are able to see some things and make changes. And so I'll do most of the scout during the week, and then let them have the walkthrough as part of their ownership of the program and game prep.
Man, it takes that off your plate, especially if it's not something that you enjoy and feel like you get a tremendous amount of benefit from. That, in a lot of cases, if it's something that you're not that enthusiastic about, your assistants probably are doing a better job of it anyway.
Oh yeah, what I really love doing is I love being the one that sets, as it goes through game film, draws it up on fast draw, has everything ready. And what we try to do a good job of is the first time through, we actually assign a manager that his main job is he catches calls in game time, so we can go in and match it. So, if I'm playing you and you're calling, you've got red, well, we know you ran red at 2 minutes and 45 seconds in the first quarter. I'm going to go in, to take that game film, draw that play. So, talk about adjustments. Earlier in the first quarter, we talked about state tournament adjustments. We're going to know what red is. And you talk about demoralizing to a team when you call out a play and our kids start saying, hey, here comes a back cut. And, you see them kind of like, well, this will never work. So,
Absolutely.
So we spend a lot of time on doing that. But I think, too, and we talked about this earlier, I think a lot of coaches spend too much time worrying about their opponent, not as much on themselves. Jamie Smith, he's been a guest on here. Jamie's dad's a legend. And he told me, Jamie's dad, shared with us early in the season, show them everything you got in the first quarter, because he said they'll spend their whole time in practice. If you run 20 plays, call 20 different plays, because now this coach has to spend all his time, drawing and talking about that, and he's not spending time on himself. And so it's one of those where we don't mind showing things early. We'll wrinkle it, we'll change names, but I think that's such a big part of just preparation. And I like I said, I'm not a big game day guy unless it's a state tournament type thing or tournament setting. But as for conference opponents that we've got 10, 11 film on, I feel like we prepare really well during the week and try to keep the focus on ourselves as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm a proponent of that for sure. I think that when you spend time doing what you do well and working on those things, that oftentimes you're much better off than I haven't coached a high school team for a while, but they had enough difficulty figuring out what we were doing, let alone figuring out and trying to memorize and learn what the opponent was doing. So I think if you get some general tendencies, who the best players are, and then you focus on what you do best, I think in the long run, that's your best strategy.
Sure. No, I agree with that totally.
All right, listeners, it's time for the fourth quarter.
Let's talk a little bit about how we can use stats and analytics to help our team be more successful.
Fran Fraschilla uses a phrase, and I should have it written down in front of me. Stats will convict, and video indicts. And what that means, I believe that's I said, and I apologize to coach if I mess that up. But one of the things we look at quite a bit is as a kid's shot chart, opponent's shot chart, and also our own shot chart, because we want to make sure we're practicing. For us, we want to make sure we're practicing that shot. For them, we want to know what he's comfortable and take that away. And I've used Crossover, I've used Huddle. They're both really good companies. They both do some great things. But I think what I like the most about using those guys is they don't. And I know it sounds bad, but it's non-personal. They don't know our guys. Just using an example, if my son Evan has a turnover, well, the guy doing the analytics doesn't know Evan's my son. He might put it two and two together if he sees our name, but if Evan makes a bad pass, it's a turnover. It's not, could that guy have caught it? And so it takes whether or not the personal part of it, and numbers are numbers. And that's what I like about that. And we use that quite a bit. I'm not a big fan of plus minus, just for two reasons. Number one, I really don't understand it. And number two, I just don't think it tells the truth. I mean, I have a friend that loves it, but I have games where we've won, and the guy that I felt had the game of his life is a -3. And I'm like, there's so many factors into it. I like value points. I like the one that what you want to emphasize, that's a big thing for us. Like we love assists. We love 2 feet jump stops in the lane. If you get your feet wet in the paint, that's a big thing for us on offense. And so we look at ways to put more value on that. And, even in practice, if we're playing cutthroat and, we really stress getting 2 feet in the paint, playing off 2 feet, and the guy goes in, jumps off one and just gets destroyed, he's not getting a whistle from us, but he goes in off 2 feet and might get a feather bump and he's getting a foul. And, the defense, oh, it wasn't, come on, but he did exactly what we wanted to do. And so I think you've got to look at stats and analytics in a way of, yes, it's truthful. Yes, you can't really argue them, but are they reinforcing what you believe and what you're teaching? And that's the hard part, is finding the balance in that, because numbers don't lie, stats don't lie, but I do think you've got to find a way to balance. Are they reinforcing your program and what you believe and teach?
There's still something to be said for the eye test. And I think when you're coaching, especially as you look at the statistics from, again, like you said, like shot chart, or in terms of where you're getting your shots and the number of threes that you're taking and the points per possession. And those are things that I think I would probably look at most closely. But even that being said, to your point, a lot of times the things that the statistics say may not always reflect what you observe or value as a coach. There may be things that a particular player does that even with the advanced stats don't necessarily show up. And so I think that it's good coaches are out there that are balancing what they see with their eyes versus what the statistics are telling them.
Sure. And, DER is a big thing for us, defensive efficiency rating. Like we feel we do a really good job on defense, and we were getting better actually the last couple of games, and our DER has proved it. And that's the thing that is enjoyable for a coach, is when you feel like you just you walk off the game court and you know, like, man, we dominated them on the glass, and then you see it on paper. Or there's times that you think, we weren't that bad, and then you find on a number that you were horrible. And so sometimes it skews it. Sometimes it makes you reevaluate how you're adjusting, how you're looking at things. And I always feel like I like our pace of play, and the first thing I look at there is points per possession, but then also turnovers. And I always want to find, and it's just our nature as coaches, I think, but I always want to find the negative in our stats, because I think that's your teaching points. I love finding the positive, because that's something you can go and celebrate and encourage that this is what we want to continue to do. When our assists are up, it's crazy how when our assists are up, our points per game, our points per possession go up. And we want to explain to that, like we're taking standstill threes. That's not, and that comes from what we talk and what we preach. Get your feet wet. If you can't score, spray out, and you're shooting a standstill three. Our points per possession should go up. And so that's the fun thing. I think you can get lost in statistics. I think you can, kind of get away from what you believe in, because you start looking at them and digging in. I think the worst thing you can do is look at stats the first 5 games of the season, because you don't know who you are. Your team doesn't know who you are, unless you're returning 5 starters, but I think that's the worst time to look at it. I think around December is the best time to crack into it, right before your conference starts, because your rotation's probably going to change. And I think, again, we'll really start looking deep into our opponent's stats, because it's always intriguing to me to see if their shots change. Like when I look at their shot chart, does it change from when they play me versus when they play a Fayetteville or a Rogers, or where are they getting shots, or are they just dead set on, this is what we're going to do? Guys that teach dribble drive, they want layups or free throws or 3-point shots. And so without even knowing what a team does for sure, if you give me a shot chart and I can look and there's never a mid-range, I can tell you this is probably what they're doing on offense. And so that's kind of the telltale, for those guys, is being able to just pick apart what a coach wants. And then, the fun part for all of us is, make them take the shot they don't practice, make them comfortable taking tough twos, things like that. And so I think for us, this year it's been a big thing on the statistics, knowing what a coaches want to do, knowing that, they outscore their opponents in the first quarter. So if we can just weather the storm, we're going to be okay. But again, like it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You can overwhelm yourself in it so much that you get away from worrying about your own self and taking care of your team.
So that being said, how much time do you spend in a week going over film and statistics? Like on an average week, how much time are you spending?
I spend anywhere from 1 to 3 hours a day myself. We really kind of got it when we talked about this as a staff last week. We've got away from it with our team because right now we have huddle, and so kids can get on there and look at it, and you can tell who's watching film, who's not. I always felt, again, kind of like on game day, like I would get more angry during film because, let's face it, everybody wants to be in a mixtape. Somebody gets embarrassed, the whole, ooh, everybody, and so now you're yelling them to be quiet, or somebody has a great move. Coach, replay that, and they want, and you're like, come on, man, we're just trying. And so in the past, I've had teams where I would clip it and it'd be no more than 10 minutes max because you lose their attention. Guy in our league, I know they watch film every day for an hour. And, but it's something he believes in. And so I think it's got to be what you believe in. But for me, I'm watching at least 1 to 3 hours a day, just myself, making notes. I keep a binder on every team in our league, and we print off the stats, put them in there. But then I keep things just for myself that, if I could steal a set from somebody, but I also, I try to watch film on college games, things like that too, just because I'm a junkie of it and I like it. But I think it helps me dissect the game a little better. If I can jump ahead or guess at what's coming and what they're going to do, and that's kind of, I guess that's kind of my sick fun out of it, is trying to guess what that this coach is going to try to do next.
How much of the stats do you share with the kids?
Not much, really. We share our opponent's stats. Our guys know, they have access to what they're doing. If it's a negative, we show them like, hey, you need to chill out on this. And a lot of that too is if you're having kids know when they're shooting the ball bad. I think you run into this. If you got a kid that's in a shooting slump, the worst thing you can do is tell him the numbers, because it's almost impossible for them to catch up. And so I think you've got to encourage them to keep shooting or encourage them to find another way to help the team. Like shooters are supposed to shoot, but but you've got to be honest with the guy too. If he's not a guy you don't want shooting the basketball, we tell him, we don't want you shooting that shot right now. And that's one of the best ways to improve that. We had a young man, it's been years ago, that we had a limit on him, and it was to protect his percentage. And at first he got mad and kind of defiant, but it was real easy for me to say, hey, look, if you go 1 for 3, his rule was don't miss more than 2. And that was perimeter shooting for threes. I don't care if you go 8 for 10, just don't go 8 for 11. If you're 0 for 2, don't be 0 for 3, because what he didn't understand was when I was trying to help him get recruited, 1 for 3 is 33%. Most guys are okay with that, living with that. 1 for 4, he's not real good. Now he's a 25% 3-point shooter. And so we were able to manipulate, his numbers by putting limits on him. Just don't miss 2. And once he accepted that, he became a really good scorer for us.
Yeah, that's one way that stats can definitely help shape the way that you deal with your players, the way you work with your team. If you had to look back, over the course of your coaching career and think about prior to the huddle, the crossover, and the access to that kind of, statistical data and information, how are those two platforms? What's the biggest change in terms of whether it's the way you coach or just the way you look at statistics that those services have provided?
Man, it's crazy. Like I think the number one thing, and Basu would tell you this, is the time. Like it's like having a full staff. Like I still remember the days when I just started coaching where you would pop in, if you were lucky enough to have a seat, the DVD, you would pop the DVD in. have a legal pad, and that's how you did your stats. And you sit down and watch the game and have to pause it and rewatch and pause and rewatch and hope that they didn't miss plays too much, and then now you got to transfer your chicken scratch off of that pad onto something else and save it and not lose it. And now the fact you come in, you upload your film, and then most time the next morning it's back. And there's errors because camera angles and things like that. But right now, I mean, if you ask me, hey, can you tell me what you're shooting? All I got to do is log in to my account, and there it is. I mean, every game. And so I think it's changed. It's synergy. What they're able to do is unreal, and we're getting closer to that with the high school game. But I've talked about this with a lot of coaches. I think one of the worst things that we're putting out there is minutes per game, because now, Johnny's able to look at Joe and be like, well, I'm only getting 18 minutes and he's getting 24. And now, it's out there for them now. I mean, minutes per game. And, when some schools have the ability to give you the stats right there, dead balls, timeouts, halftime, and kids see that. And minutes per game is I think it's one of the worst things that's on a stat. I wish we could, mark that off, white it out, whatever, because, now people see it. When you think about it, when we played, you realize, like, when you went into a game, you didn't start counting in your head, okay, I'm going to be out here. I mean, you're just happy you got to play. And now, with the way everything's going, I mean, they know exactly how many minutes they're playing. It's just,
yeah, that's a dangerous game when two kids play, sort of the same amount of minutes, and all of a sudden one kid's looking and thinks he plays the same as someone else, and man, he's getting 22 minutes and I'm getting 18. That 4 minutes all of a sudden becomes a big difference. Whereas if that minutes per game wasn't right in their face, you might not even notice the difference.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like early in the season, especially, like when playing time becomes a discussion, like that's always the argument. Well, they're not getting an opportunity. Well, then, and so you've got to be able to justify and explain, like, I'm not getting an opportunity because they don't, they're not producing in the time they have. But it's that's one of the hard parts with statistics being so public and out there is it becomes an argument piece for people. And again, that, like we talked about, that goes back to the eye test and just kind of that feeling of what's doing right for your team.
All right, I think we have come to the end of this particular episode of Four Quarters with Greg White.
That's game, man.
Greg, once again, I know people have probably listened to you on the show before, but go ahead and share how people can reach out to you if they want to get in contact with you, and then we'll wrap up the episode after that.
Yeah, my email is gwhite32@att.net. My Twitter handle is gregwhite32. You can follow me there, send a message, and I always enjoy talking basketball. You can drop me shoot me an email or get in touch with me, and I'll give you my cell phone, and we can set up time to talk. But I think the fun thing about, we talked last time about shot clock, things like that, and that discussion is really starting to grow and hopefully catch some steam. But what I love so much about talking basketball with people is all the different opinions, and there's some people come across and they may think, oh, Coach White's just griping about things. And I really try to educate myself on other people's opinion and love their passion and understand why they feel like they do. And I talked to, a guy earlier today about the shot clock, and, he's just, we don't need one. And I said, I'm not trying to change your mind that we do. I'm just trying to tell you my opinion on why I think we do. I love the fact that people are passionate against it. Love people are passionate for it. And so that's why I'm so thankful for what you guys are doing. I think you're a great tool for us to keep growing our game and the conversation of just how to make basketball better for not only coaches and players, but just the game in general. So appreciate you guys a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the exchange of ideas is the key. And when you get people talking, you get people discussing, I think that's when you eventually reach an answer or a solution that makes sense for everybody. And again, I appreciate you saying that, Greg. Jason and I have had just a fantastic time doing the podcast, getting a chance to talk to great people from all across the country that really think the game and really care about the game and want the game to be better. And to me, that's really what it's all about. And we're excited to have you a part of what we're doing here. And we'll certainly be catching up for another episode of Four Corners very, very soon. So thanks, Greg, for jumping on. And to everyone out there, we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.
Head Start Basketball's Player Development Academy offers Cleveland area players a unique opportunity to improve their basketball skills. Regardless of a player's age, skill level, or position, training with Head Start Basketball will elevate your game to the next level. Do you want to improve your ball handling, become a better shooter, or develop into a more skilled, confident player? Our Academy classes offer training that's designed to do just that. Our training sessions are innovative and will have you learning skills that are transferable to actual games. We have 4 different class skill levels for boys and girls, ages 4 and up. All Player Development Academy classes will be held at the Strongsville Recreation Center. For more information or to get registered, please visit www.headstartbasketball.com.
Thanks for listening to the Hoop Heads podcast, brought to you by Head Start Basketball.